This is the Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, on Talk Radio 570 KBI. Now, back to the show with local mortgage and finance expert, Tina Mitchell.
Welcome back to the Money Hour with your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell, right here on 570 KBI. I've built a network of elite industry professionals every week sharing their knowledge and experience and expertise with all of my listeners. Right now in studio, Jim Black with Absolute Return Solutions. Knowing what to do is just as important as knowing what not to do when it comes to retirement planning. And do you want to retire comfortably, or do you want to be stuck in retirement broke? And Jim, that's why I love having you in here, sharing your wealth of information with my listeners. And I appreciate so much your time coming in here into studio, and especially on a Sunday.
Always enjoy coming in.
So a little bit about Jim. Jim Black has been providing advice to clients for over 25 years. In that time, he has worked for some of the largest financial institutions in the world and advised clients in nearly all phases of financial spectrum. A few years ago, Jim wrote a best-selling book, Happy Ever After. Retirement doesn't have to be just a fairy tale. He's been featured on many TV shows and radio programs. Obviously, I've had the benefit to have him here quite often, right here on 570 KBI. And recently, he's made a guest appearance on New Day Northwest on King 5. So it's awesome.
Correct. Thank you.
So, Jim, let's go ahead and start out. I've seen on TV lately talking about the biggest fear that people have, and that's running out of money in retirement. Can you talk about that?
Well, it's interesting. When I talk to people, and it doesn't matter when they come in the office, whether they have $500,000 or $5 million, everybody's got the same concern. Nobody knows how long they're going to live, and everybody's afraid that with inflation that you pointed out, rising interest rates, and certainly longevity, that they won't have as much money as they're going to need when they get to the tail end of their life.
And isn't that funny, Jim, that we aren't satisfied with, and I deal the same thing on the mortgage side. When people have a payment objective, which I just talked about buying power, that payment never buys them the house they want. And there's just so much planning and things to maximize so that you can have a happier retirement. So let's talk about your best-selling book and what that is, and how could one of my listeners get that?
Well, certainly. I mean, anybody who's interested in getting a copy of the book, if they contact the show, we will actually send them out a copy. We get a number of copies from the publisher every month, and we're happy to send those out to the listeners of this show.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much, Jim. So again, you can go online at themoneyhour.com and request that, themoneyhour.com, or pick up the phone and give the show a call, 1-888-987-0570, and we will get you a copy of the book. So talk a little bit about the book.
Well, I wrote the book initially, actually, with a request from clients who wanted to send information out to other friends and acquaintances around the country. And I wrote it like I was talking to my mom, who is not really involved or even care about financial things. So I wrote it with the idea that somebody could sit down and in an hour to an hour and a half read through that and come out of it feeling like they could make some educated decisions about how they could spend or want to spend the rest of their lives. What are the options that they can do? The reality is, once they get the last paycheck they are ever going to get for the rest of their lives, they have to look at things differently. And if they make a mistake, well, they're going back to work.
Yeah, if you're listening and you just realize you're not going to get an increase in your pay, you might want to be planning a little bit when that time happens. So you're Jim, you do a retirement planner and concentrating on distributioning planning. Boy, I'm having a hard time with my words today.
Distribution planning.
Thank you so much. Can you explain that to me and my listeners?
That's a great actually lead into the concept we were just talking about. And that is, once you get the last paycheck you're ever going to get for the rest of your life, it's all about not how much your money has grown to. It's about being able to make that a paycheck forever. It's about cash flow. So you could have $10 million, but if you don't have enough money to pay the light bill, enough liquid cash, you're sitting in the dark. And so the concept of distribution planning is just simply that, making sure that your money lasts as long as you do.
So let's talk about that, and let's talk about how Social Security can fit into that plan. What are people's options?
Social Security is such a huge area, and every time I turn on the news, we hear that Congress or the president want to change how Social Security either pays out or doesn't pay out. The reality is there's probably hundreds of different ways that you could take your Social Security. But if you make the mistake that most people do, You can literally cost yourself $1,000 a month. How much of a house could you buy with an extra $1,000 a month? But by taking your Social Security incorrectly and not maximizing the benefits that you're entitled to, you're leaving money on the table, hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of your lifetime.
And like I've said before, I mean, everything regarding money, and this is why I love doing this show so much, is there's so many different arenas, and you need an expert that's specific in that area on all of these areas to make sure that you're covered on all bases. And we all know that there's so many ways to pay less in taxes, to maximize our investments. You just need to talk to the right people. So, Jim, I know you have 2 rules. What are those?
The 2 main rules that I look at when I'm talking to anybody or looking out there that I have seen wipe out people's retirement faster than anything. The number one mistake that I see people make, hence the number one rule, is never draw income from a fluctuating account, which sounds a little bit complicated, but it's really fairly simple. Everybody needs income on a monthly basis. But if you're drawing income from a source, say a mutual fund or some type of account where the principal is fluctuating every month, you're actually shooting yourself in the foot, because as the market's going up, you're taking money out of an account that should be your biggest growing account. As the market's going down, you're accelerating your loss. And so you can find that you run out of money significantly faster by drawing income, simply taking it from the wrong place. It doesn't matter the amount, it's just the place you take it from. Huge mistake.
Okay.
The second one that I look at has to do with your comment about taxes. Everything in retirement is about cash flow. And basically the second rule is never pay taxes on interest and dividends that you're not spending. So if you're paying taxes on things like reinvested money from a CD or a mutual fund, you're actually paying taxes to the IRS. There's a benefit to them, but there's no actual benefit to yourself. So you're paying taxes unnecessarily. Now, I'm not saying don't pay taxes when you get a 1099.
Of course. What
I'm saying is what you need to do is be reallocating that money so that it's not generating a taxable consequence until you're ready to spend it.
So, Jim, if we have someone that's listening right now, I mean, every person's situation is going to be a lot different. What do you suggest to do, and what do you do in that offer of the consultation process?
Well, for us, we offer the opportunity for anyone to come in, sit down in the office, sit down with a professional, and spend an hour of time asking any questions that you can think of about anything related to your finances, whether it's can you retire, whether it's how much money do you need to have to be able to retire, how do you maximize Social Security, how do you reduce taxes, how do you make sure that money goes to your heirs instead of the IRS at your death.
Yeah.
Basically, they can come into the office, someone will sit down with them, talk about what their issues are, their questions, and see, number one, what they really need to do, and number two, if there's a fit between what they are looking for and what they need and what our firm actually does.
Makes total sense. So again, if you want that expertise and that advice, pick up the phone, 1-888-987-0570. Again, 1-888-987-0570. Now, Jim, another topic that is a hot topic is long-term care insurance and how expensive it is. So what are you advising your clients in your firm on this topic?
Boy, that's a good one. I just had somebody in my office this morning who walked in who's had a long-term care policy for about 7 years. They were notified this week that their premium's being raised 42%.
Oh my gosh.
For the next year.
Wow.
And with no guarantee it won't raise the following year. And so it's creating a new industry. There's a lot of different alternatives now. You know, the reality is probably everybody doesn't need long-term care. The first thing is to determine if it's even a need. And so there's a lot of people who could self-insure against that issue, and there's some who are going to qualify for Medicaid, so it wouldn't make sense to pay for that. But it's that group in the middle. So there's certainly traditional long-term care, but there's some newer things that are coming onto the arena, which are, I think, much more user-friendly, where you can control the costs and still get the benefits that you need.
Makes total sense. So what are some important traits that a retiree should look for when searching for the financial advisor they want to work with?
The number one thing I would always tell someone to look for is to look for a fiduciary. Now, a fiduciary, of course, similar to your situation, has a legal responsibility to do what's in the client's best interest. You would think anybody who deals with client funds would be a fiduciary, but the reality is most people are not. And so sometimes advice that people receive is not necessarily what's in their best interest. So that's number one. Look for somebody or a firm that is a fiduciary.
Okay.
The next thing I'd look for somebody who knows what they're talking about. anybody can hang out a shingle and call themselves a planner. I would look for a CFP, a Certified Financial Planner, which is similar to a CPA in the accounting field. Somebody who has been around a while and at least knows how to make this work. The last thing I would look at in that area, I'm sure there's many more, but the next thing would be somebody who looks at something comprehensively, who looks at not just how do you get the income that you need today, how do you get it when inflation goes up, how do you control taxes, how do you control distribution to your heirs. Somebody who's really looking at the whole picture, because everything is very connected.
So, and it's funny that you mention CFP designation, because have you seen that commercial on the DJ?
The DJ, yes.
It's hilarious. That's just, as soon as you said that, I was like, oh my gosh, that was, and it's true. I mean, you can dress the part and look like you've got the advice, but make sure they have the credentials to back them up. So let's talk about what's wrong with variable annuities.
Oh, well, how long is the program?
You got another 3 minutes.
No. So variable annuities, I think it's a big trigger. We spend a lot of time helping people fix problems that have been created by variable annuities. Variable annuities basically is a product sold typically by brokers. And what happens is they give the money to an insurance company who then gives the money to a mutual fund company who actually manages it. The mutual fund company charges a fee, the insurance company charges a fee, and the broker gets a part of that fee. And so you're looking at these things. I've seen variable annuities that were charging, 5.5% per year before the client got any return at all. I think Susie Orman said it best. One of her clients asked her, she said, my broker recommended that I buy a variable annuity. What should I do? And Susie Orman said, find a new broker.
Yeah. Wow. And it's great that you mentioned that, because I'm sure that there are people listening today, because being in the mortgage industry, I know exactly what you were talking about, because I had clients coming and wanting to get equity out of their home. So they were leveraging their home to actually go and buy some of these products. But it's nice to hear you to say, if you've done something and you're looking at your portfolio and you feel that you might have made a mistake, it doesn't mean it's too late. The worst thing you could do is not do anything about it. Get with somebody that's going to be able to coach you and counsel you to readjust and fix things so that you can have a better retirement.
Well said.
So let's talk about what some of the worst mistakes that you have seen when helping people get ready for retirement.
One of the things I would say is one of the biggest mistakes is that I think a lot of people have no idea how much money they can actually spend. Everybody knows, if they were to add up what's in their bank account and their checking account and their retirement accounts, they know exactly how much money they have when they go into retirement. But most people have no idea how much income they can actually get off of that.
Okay.
If somebody had $1 million, how much income can they start drawing every month of every year, growing that number with inflation, and not run out of money before they die? Most people don't know, and they're too afraid to spend the money. It's very common for someone to come into our office in their 70s and 80s who thought they were going to need all the money that they had, but then they ended up not spending it because they were afraid they were going to run out. Well, I think it's a crime to leave money on the table.
It is, because you want to enjoy your retirement years. You worked really hard.
Absolutely. And so just simply knowing what that number is, knowing how much money that you can spend can really change the way you live in your retirement. We had one couple who came in and said, based on this, it was the difference between the next cruise, whether they were on an inside cabin or whether they got to be on a balcony.
Yeah. Wow. Enjoy your life. And on the same hand, just understanding too where things are going to cost, because I think people don't look at inflation and what something's going to cost down the road, and that can end up having them lose money not preparing appropriately. So Jim, thank you so much for coming into studio. It's always a pleasure to have you here. Thanks for helping out our listeners. And again, if you want to talk with Jim and his firm, 1-888-987-0570. Call the show right now or go online to themoneyhour.com. You're awesome, Jim. Thanks.
Thank you, Tina. Appreciate it.
Coming up next in the Money Hour, the traditional real estate market isn't the only place to conduct a home search. Auctions also bring many buying opportunities, but if it's not done correctly, you may have buyer's remorse. Gil Sandoval with Skyline Properties here to break it down right here on 570 KVI after this short break.